Welcome, everyone. This is the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating podcast. Here we chat about all things boating with marine industry professionals and enthusiasts who spend all the time they can out on the water.
Hi, this is Tonia Becker, and I'm your host for today's episode of PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating. My guest today is a really interesting guy, and I'm looking forward to learning more about him. Captain Mike Roy is the founder and operator of Reelcast Charters, a fishing charter based out of Connecticut. Reelcast Charters specializes in fishing for striper on the Connecticut River and Long Island Sound. A lot of big fish on light tackle. This is interesting in and of itself, but what intrigues me even more is that Mike has a bachelor's and a master's in education. He also loves traveling around the country and to some extent internationally, fishing new waters, targeting different species, and learning new techniques. This education background, I'm guessing, drives his passion for ongoing learning and makes him an excellent teacher as he works with clients on his boats.
Yeah, I started out, in college, like most, 18-year-olds, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I got my degree in education. I was a phys ed teacher because that sounded good. In reality, I just wanted to have the summers off to go fishing. So, I grew up fishing. I've been fishing since I could walk. So, and it was always my passion in life was always fishing. I just didn't know in the Northeast, you don't see as many guides that do it full time for a living, whereas maybe in Southern Florida, it's more of a legit career. But up north, you don't really see as many people doing it up here. So I didn't really have the awareness that was something I could do for a living. And then I did, started out teaching, and that was fine. I knew I didn't want to do that my whole life. And I got my license in 2010 and started guiding, it's 10 years ago now. And then it just kind of got busier and busier. And then in 2014, I decided to take the risk, take the plunge, and I left teaching and went full time. And then once I went full time, I kind of really developed a clientele. I had a lot of steady clients, and it just kind of took off from there. And I have a few other guys working for me, and we're fortunate to be able to fish every day and do something I like to do for a living.
Yeah, I think most of us probably don't know what we want to be when we're 18. And I never really imagined as an 18-year-old I'd be hosting the PartsVu Xchange podcast.
Well, it's funny where life takes you.
Do you think that education, kind of a love for education helps you to instruct, clients when they're on your boat?
Yeah, I mean, I think I enjoy the interaction with the client because, I'm fortunate we're doing the fishing charter business is my clients want to be there. So it's extremely, in the 10 years I've been doing this, I can count on one hand how many people were on my boat where I didn't want them to be on the boat. It's pretty rare to get somebody. Generally, they want to be there. They're excited to be there. They're interested in what I do, in learning about the fishery, and you're sharing your passion. And generally, it's my clients are pretty interesting people. A lot of them are pretty successful people, so it's interesting to kind of talk with them and hear their story as well. So I think that's a big part of it, because one of the questions I get asked a lot is, do you get burnt out from fishing? Because we'll do this, and I have a couple of guys that work for me that help me out, but we basically run 7 days a week, and usually we do 2 trips a day. So I think that what stops you from getting burnt out is that one is the fishing's always different every day. And there's a variety. We're not just trolling. We're doing all different types of fishing. But it's also the client. When you have new people on the boat, it's a new experience you're sharing with them, and also a new personality. So that kind of keeps it fresh and keeps it interesting.
That's awesome. I guess most of your customers, as you say, are much more excited to be on your boat than high schoolers are to be excited to be on whatever they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you don't have people. It'd be very rare for somebody to pay you money to go and do something that they don't want to do. It usually doesn't happen.
I know a lot of anglers turn to you for striped bass fishing tips. Do you have any tips you can share with our audience that maybe you can maybe focus on tips for the fall season, given that's where we're heading this time of year?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, right now it's early October, and here in the Northeast, this is probably the most exciting time to fish. Every part of the season has its uniqueness to it, but the fall is when the our water temperatures are just starting to drop. So here in Long Island Sound and the Connecticut River, about a week ago, because we've had really warm weather all September. So the water temperatures just dropped below 70 degrees, and that makes the fish more aggressive. I was out this morning. It was raining. It was overcast, and the fish were chewing like crazy. It was really great fishing. The fall's a really good time to do a lot of topwater fishing, which is exciting because we're getting the fish to come up, and at times we have big fish, big striped bass coming up, hitting plugs on the surface, which is really exciting. Just the visual aspect of it, to see them come up and chase a lure and smack it out of the water and chase a bait. And so the fall is a great time to, you can fish for a variety of species. We have striped bass, bluefish, black sea bass. Next week in Connecticut and most of the Northeast, blackfish, aka tautog, season opens. They're really popular to fish for in the fall because we have about a 6-week season where they're open, and they're for people that like to eat fish. Blackfish, it's kind of like the grouper, comparable to a grouper down south. They similar fight and similar taste. They're really good table food to eat. And then we also have a run of false albacore and bonita, which are an exciting light tackle fish. So we have a lot of variety, and because the water temp's dropping, the fish are starting to school up. The bait, we have a lot of menhaden that are schooled up. So you could fish the bait schools, around the bait schools for big fish. There's a lot of small bait with bay anchovies, silver sides. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as rain bait because sometimes it's so small it looks like it's raining on the surface. So for the light tackle enthusiasts and the fly fishing enthusiasts, you can look for that typical, iconic fall New England fishing is the birds diving on the surface, going after the small bait, and then the fish coming up, pushing the small bait up on the surface, what we call a blitz, where the fish are blowing bait up on the surface. You could do that. You could bottom fish. So you have a lot of variety that you can do in the fall, and the fish are usually more cooperative, whereas in the summertime when the water temps are at the peak of the year, those fish can be kind of lethargic. They can be harder to catch. So the fall is definitely right now through early November is really prime time, but we'll fish all the way through November 21st this year will be our last day. But even into November, the fishing could still be pretty good.
That's great. I've never heard what you're describing in terms of this, fish blitzing and thing. That's incredible. It's pretty unique to the area, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very when people think Northeast fishing, you think of an iconic destination like a Watch Hill, Rhode Island, or a Montauk, New York, or right where I fish in Old Saybrook, in front of the lighthouse there, where you have the Terns dive bomb in the surface and all the bait and getting pushed up, and then you have the striped bass, bluefish, and false albacore that just come through and they're slashing through the bait on the surface. So it's really visually stimulating, and a lot of times just casting lures into the blitz, and when they're that aggressive, usually you could get hit pretty quick. So it's a fun way to fish.
So November 21st, you said it will be your last charter this year, and then what does the spring look like? When do you start again in the spring?
Yeah, so I start pretty early. So we'll start usually April 10th. We start our season. But those are holdover fish. So you could actually catch fish in Connecticut year round because we do have it's a winter holdover population. They'll go into our local rivers and estuaries, and they'll actually settle down in the deeper parts of the river in these massive schools. It's pretty interesting. You could go through the river in February with I use a Humminbird Solix and side imaging, and you could mark these schools of fish that are literally thousands and thousands of striped bass just sitting there, real lethargic. Personally, I don't fish in the winter, but I grew up on one of the rivers in Connecticut. So when I was a teenager, I used to go and we would catch stripers in January and February. But to me, it's they're lethargic. I don't have any desire to do that. But in April, usually by mid-April, our temperatures start to warm up, and those fish will start to get active, and they'll start to move out of the rivers, and that's when you could catch a lot of striped bass in the river that time of year. So we'll start with that. But our migratory fish, that starts more in May. So May is when we start getting fish, whether they come from the Hudson River or they're the holdover fish that are now dropping out into Long Island Sound. And we have a herring, it's a small bait fish, river herring and alewives. They spawn in the rivers. So you have striped bass going up there. So the spring, May is when it really gets going. And we pretty much have residential fish from May through November all throughout Long Island Sound.
Wow, it sounds incredible. Yeah, it's interesting. And like I said, really unique, I think.
Well, it's a great fishery. One of the things that makes it unique too is that and every fishery has its unique things about it. But one of the things that I enjoy about Long Island Sound is basically we have it's Long Island Sound is a massive estuary. It's 110 miles. It goes from it starts on the Connecticut Rhode Island border where Watch Hill, Rhode Island is, and goes all the way basically to New York City. And then it's at the widest point, it's 16 miles across from Connecticut to Long Island. And because it's a massive estuary, we have really strong tidal movements. So we have the currents in the sound are actually very strong because the waters flood in and then ebb back out into the ocean. And but because it's protected, because Long Island protects it, you're not fishing direct ocean beach. So if you were fishing in an area like New Jersey or Rhode Island, Cape Cod, you could get very big swells. The waters could get very rough. In Connecticut, we could almost fish in anything short of a hurricane because there's always a lee because the Long Island breaks up a lot of that ocean swell. So we don't have the big rollers, the big swells, which makes it a great area for if you like to fish in smaller boats or a bay boat. You could get really close to the rocks and to structure and cast lures because we don't have that huge groundswell that you get into the ocean. And we also have several major rivers. So I base out of Old Sabre, Connecticut, which is the mouth of the Connecticut River. And the Connecticut River is over 400 miles long, starts in Canada. And where I'm at is the mouth of it where the Connecticut River meets Long Island Sound. So you have a tremendous amount of bait that moves in and out of the river, which is basically like a conveyor belt for the striped bass to set up and feed in the mouth of the river. So we do have a really great fishery, and you could fish it in almost any conditions.
That's interesting. That is, I had a friend that recently a couple years ago, bought a house on the Long Island Sound, literally like just across the street from the water. And I was not aware of the topography of the area. And I kind of told her that I can't remember the town that they're in, but I kind of told her that she's crazy. I mean, you're going to get wiped out by a hurricane, but it sounds like it's pretty protected.
Yeah, I mean, it does get rough, and there has. I mean, in Sandy and Irene back, I think they were like 2012. Like there's always a chance depending on where the waterfront property is, but there's a lot of great waterfront property in Connecticut where you're still elevated enough. It's a rocky shoreline and the houses are up enough where some people have waterfront property that they're never going to get flooded just because of the house is on enough of an incline. And you're not going to get that same, it can get rough, but it's not the same type of seas you would get being right on if you're on the South Shore of Long Island and you're just exposed to the open ocean. It's a different type of wave you're going to get there.
That makes sense.
You can't surf in Connecticut.
Well, I'd rather give up surfing and not have my house like washed away. I would be willing to make that compromise.
Right. Yeah.
So you'll start taking people out again in April. Do you, to kind of your reservations, when does your schedule and availability get pretty tight?
I mean, yeah, we have people start booking because I have a lot of regular customers. I have some people that will book, 2 to a dozen trips a year, and I actually have one that goes every week with me, and but we'll start booking in January. Usually, especially for summer, like June, July, August, we're usually booked at least a month out in advance. I have 4 other captains working with me as well. So that helps to kind of open up the schedule a bit. But yeah, usually people will start booking. Like if you wanted to do a trip in the middle of the summer, you probably want to book that trip in the spring, especially if you have a specific date that you want to do, you need to book that a few months ahead of time.
Well, that's good. That's helpful, I'm sure, for people to know. Um, And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be interested in the boats and the engines you operate. I think that you run 23-foot deep V Pathfinders powered by 250 horsepower Suzukis. Is this correct? And how did you choose this setup?
So I've actually gone through 3 boats in the past. I had 3 boats in 3 years. So I was trying to dial in the perfect boat. But the Deep V Pathfinder is a really unique boat. And I think for a 23-foot boat, 23 and under, it's the best in class until you go to a bigger boat. They only made, I believe it was Pathfinder only made 85 of them. And I think they're built down in Fort Myers, actually. Fort Myers, Florida, I believe. But it was a limited production. And I found this hull in Georgia a couple years ago. And I bought it unseen in Georgia because I knew I wanted this hull. And what makes it such a unique hull is that for a 23-foot boat, they've utilized every inch of floor space in the boat. So there's, I believe there's 6 in-floor storage compartments. So I have massive fish boxes, a 50-gallon live well tank. It's hard to find big live well tanks in smaller boats. That's always a struggle I do a lot of live bunker, what we call bunker or menhaden fishing, or pogies, and depending where you are in the country. But they're a bait that's hard to keep alive, so you need a big live well. So the boat has a 50-gallon live well. It has pitch wells, and has just a flat deck, really good gunnel height. So it's a really good light tackle fishing boat for a 23-foot boat. It offers a lot.
Wow. And does Pathfinder make a similar boat, or they just...
No, what they did is, and Pathfinder does make a great boat. They're focused on bay boats, so they make a great bay boat. I know they just came out with a 27-foot, kind of like a hybrid. It's like a bay boat. It has a casting deck. The reason why we can't fish bay boats don't work as well. Some people do fish bay boats up here, but my reason why I couldn't, just being a full-time guide, is when it's rough out, and it does get rough, and we do fish a lot of rips where it's pretty rough, is with a customer, you put him on a casting deck and there's nothing to keep in the boat. So I could just see someone or something falling overboard. Whereas you don't want a gunnel height that's too high, because then it interferes with your, if you're throwing a cast net or you're casting, the high gunnels will get in the way when you're fishing. So you want a gunnel that's, is going to keep you in the boat, but isn't too high. And that's kind of what my boat does. That's the only problem with the bay boats, is if it's rough out, it's hard to fish in a bay boat in Long Island Sound.
That makes complete sense. And I would imagine that customers falling out of the boat is bad for your liability insurance premiums.
I've never had it happen, knock on wood. So I hope to keep that going.
Yeah. I think that's a good goal. So I'd like to close our conversation by asking, what's been the most rewarding part about growing Reelcast Charters? I mean, you're up to 5 captains, as you said, I believe, including yourself. What do you love about this business, and what's next?
Well, I think it's anytime you build something on your own is it's really rewarding. I put in a lot of work, tremendous amount of work, countless hours, but it's rewarding to see the growth, to see the clientele, and being able to work with partner companies like Shimano and Humminbird and Code, so growing that, being able to work with other companies, and I'm just looking to continue to, grow my business, but also looking to do more work with my sponsors. I mean, I enjoy doing photo shoots, and we've done a couple like short films, and so stuff like that's a lot of fun, and I'm hoping just to get more opportunities like that.
Yeah, absolutely. PartsVu is getting ready to add a Suzuki the Suzuki catalog. So we'll, certainly consider heading up your way and doing some filming with you if you're
Oh,
open to
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
So
that would be great. If you need a
Yeah.
Suzuki guy,
yeah, we
count
will.
me in.
We
Yeah.
know a lot of Yamaha and a lot of Mercury guys, but you're the first Suzuki guy I've met. Actually, I really, not met in life, but just that it'll be a new catalog for us for sure. Well, thanks so much for being here with me today, Mike. I mean, listeners if you're interested in fishing the Connecticut River and Long Island Sound, I'd really encourage you to connect with Reelcast Charters at www.reelcastcharters.com. I'll include that in the show notes as well, so you guys all have that information. And I'm excited to head your way soon as myself. So, love to go out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, would love to have you. And thanks for having me. And also, Real Cast Charters, real spelt with 2 E's. So.
Oh, thank you. Yes, like a fishing reel, not real fun. Real fun, although everybody will have real fun on your boat. Thanks so much, Mike.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating podcast. Is it almost time for routine maintenance on your outboard or Mercruiser marine engine? Check out our easy-to-use maintenance kits at PartsVu.com. And for free shipping, use the coupon code PVTalksBoating, a special perk for our podcast listeners. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for boating knowledge, to keep in touch with the PartsVu community, and for special sales and promotions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and check out the show notes for the coupon code just mentioned, more information about PartsVu and the products we offer, as well as our boating blog, the PartsVu Xchange. And a big thanks to Mind for performing the original music featured within this podcast.